Everybody. I'm Vice Chair Lazaris, and I'd like to welcome you to the July 14, 2021 Historic Resource Commission meeting. The HRC is a quasi-judicial body that's governed by North Carolina general statutes, the City of Asheville's Unified Development Ordinance, and Buncombe County Ordinance. We are authorized to hear requests for certificate of appropriateness for alterations, demolitions, new construction, and other work within historic districts, or for the alteration and demolition of historic landmarks and other duties, including preliminary review of subdivisions as specified in the ordinances for the HRC. I would like now to welcome our newest commissioner, Georgine Falcon. Georgine Falcon, thank you. And we'll now ask commission members to introduce themselves and say a sentence or two about their background or experience as it relates to serving in the commission. So let's start on this side.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Will Hornaday, and I'm from Albemarle Park, a local historic district.
I'm Stephanie West. I'm with Whitney Commercial Real Estate. I do a lot of historic commercial renovations.
I guess Gail Lazaris, background in Historic Preservation Act and historic building renovations.
Hi, Sue Oliva. I'm a historian and also have a degree in architectural technology.
Georgine Falcon. We moved from Elizabeth City 10 months ago, where I was on the Historic Preservation Commission for about 14 years off and on. And I had also volunteered at Mount Vernon when we lived in Alexandria for about 5 years.
Hi, I'm Sarah Gardner, and I have special interest in the background in anthropology and archaeology.
I also wanted to mention for all commissioners that these are not working as far as I'm aware of, so project your voice as we're speaking. It's still being recorded. Everything should still be there, but it did not sound that loud. I was going to mention it first, but
For the people who will be speaking from the audience too, important for you to speak up when you come to the podium because recorders over here. So fortunately our audio is just not working. We'll have that big screen.
excellent. So we will consider the minutes from the June meeting of the HRC. The minutes include findings of fact and conclusions of law. Are there any corrections?
Finding none, I make a motion to pass approve the minutes from the June meeting. Hornaday.
Fantastic. Let's recall a vote.
You don't have to do roll call anymore.
I'll
because
do
you're
roll
in
call.
person.
Okay, thank you. It's like the adjustment back to in
You
person.
can just say all in favor, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's good enough. Okay, cool. All right, so next we have the swearing in. So anybody that is planning to speak today, come up to the podium, hover around in this front vicinity. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness before the Historic Resource Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And I believe we are now ready to move to the evidentiary hearings for the items listed on the agenda. Okay, Alex, makes sense to me to read this first and then talk about the whole business before we correct.
If you want to, probably the best thing to do is to ask for a motion on the first two items, the old business items, to continue them to August. And then that way we can just check that box
And then I'll read
and then move on. Yeah.
So does anybody have a motion for 240 Pearson Avenue and 119 Cumberland Avenue to continue to move those to August?
Our motion to continue 240 Pearson and 119 Cumberland to the August meeting.
There's a second? Second. All in favor? All right, thank you. As a quasi-judicial proceeding, the HRC is not setting policy, nor are we soliciting public opinion on the desirability of an application. The HRC hears and considers evidence presented and applies the standards set forth in the guidelines and standards of the specific historic district for that application. Excuse me. The HRC must make its decision upon competent, material, and substantial evidence to determine the facts of the hearing. The HRC will use judgment and discretion to apply the standards contained in the relevant guidelines to the facts. The commissioners, in voting for an item, will not have a fixed opinion that is not subject to change, will not have a conflict of interest, and will not have engaged in ex parte communication regarding the application. And I'm going to go on with the rules for speaking, or does that say wait until we're actually soliciting?
You can go ahead and read through that part and then,
So I'm just giving some baselines now for the rules for speaking. The meeting's open to the public, but participation is limited to interested parties who wish to provide comment and/or testimony regarding the proposal. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and how they relate to the relevant historic district standards and guidelines, not personal preference or opinion. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony at this. We've already done the swearing in, so that is good. And now we can move to our first public hearing item, which is 83 West Chestnut Street.
thank you, Vice Chair Lazaris, and members of the commission for being here today. So sorry if I seem a little bit disjointed as I'm giving this staff report to you. I'm not used to using our new video setup, so bear with me. But so the first item for 83 West Chestnut is for a small addition on the rear elevation of this little kind of Victorian, kind of has a little bit of a Gothic vibe to it. It's on the corner of West Chestnut Street and Short Magnolia. So I'm just going to run through the photos really quickly, and then I'll move on to the onto the elevation drawing. So this is another view of the front elevation, and this is a straight on of the rear elevation. As you can see, there are a few of these little cottages in Montford that have these sort of more complex roof forms on the back, which is really lovely, but hard to work with, as you might imagine, for an addition. As far as the Montford design standards get pretty down into the weeds on horizontal elements not aligning and those sorts of things. So, but otherwise, material-wise, it should match and be really similar in appearance. I say that first because it differs a little bit from the Secretary of the Interior standards, which a lot of people are really familiar with when it comes to additions. They read that that an addition should be differentiated, whereas the Montford standards say that it should match. So, so this is the building plans, as you can see from the site plan need my little pointer, different than the projector screen. So if you're looking at the site plan, the dark shape of the main house, you can see on the top, like extending from the top side of the house is that little, it looks like a box with an X in it. That's the addition. So it's pretty small. When I first met with the applicant, they showed me some plans that showed that we talked through kind of some of the potential challenges around coming off of the back elevation for the addition. As you can see, like top right, that's looking straight on at the back with the new addition, and below is what's existing. So we talked through kind of the challenge around that guideline of aligning horizontal elements and how to work with that with this addition. And initially they had a proposal that dropped the roof line down just a little bit. So that element was the same shape. It was just a little bit lower than the roof line of the existing gable end that comes out. They revised the drawings to show it aligning exactly with kind of all the elements, which that we just kind of run into that sometimes with additions in Montford for houses like this that have a more complex rear elevation as far as working with the roof form. One thing they did do that we talked about is they added a piece of trim, a vertical piece of trim between the historic part of the house and the addition, which I think is one way to kind of help differentiate where the new and the old separate. They are proposing to do stucco siding matching the existing house on the foundation. One other thought I had in reviewing this is that perhaps they could use an alternative material on the basement level that might also help differentiate it from the rest of the house. I'm not sure that the trim I think definitely helps, the vertical trim, but perhaps something else to help differentiate it would be better. But otherwise, not noting any concerns. They're going to they are removing 2 original windows, but they will be retained and preserved on site. And that is stipulated in the approval. But otherwise, the new windows will be wood and will match the existing windows in style. So it's a pretty simple little addition to this building. And I've not noted any concerns about anything except for just opening the discussion on that guideline about horizontal elements. Not general. I think it reads as they should generally not align. So it's a little bit of gray area in there, I think. A room for interpretation. So that is pretty much summarizes what I have to offer at this point, but I'm happy to answer questions if you all have any.
So the vertical divider on that that's what's breaking up the horizontal lines is the.
Yeah, let me see if I can zoom in on this. Yeah, on the proposed east elevation where, they're showing the siding, it's the trim piece between that and the white.
The siding matches.
Yeah, the siding will match, and that's what the guidelines pretty much require. So it will be wood siding with the same reveal. Okay, thank you. Rob, if you need help navigating here, I know this is different than how we used to do it. We still have our projector, so we can put plans up there too if we need to, but I can help.
Great. Thanks. Sure. Hey, I'm Rob Moody, representing Hands of Sean Perry, and there's some other hands of Sean Perry, at Sean Perry's hands, actually. We're the contractor for this project. We looked up some history about the home. It is listed in the tax records as 1920, but it's definitely older than that. It's got 10-foot ceilings, I believe, 10 or 12. 10, yeah. All the numbers get mixy. But 10-foot ceilings, and the architectural fixtures are obviously Victorian. I was able to find, the architect was A.L. Melton, who did a number of houses and buildings in Asheville. He's from Morganton, moved here in the late 1800s. He did the Drummer Building and the Windsor Hotel downtown, and the house right next door to this, to the right, among many others. House on the corner of Blake and Montford as well. That's a typical Victorian. His typical features for his design included steep pitched roof, a projecting gable in the front, which this has. Let's see.
I separated the photo file out to a different
Okay.
document, so.
There it is. Got it. Yeah, so there. And a wraparound porch. At some point throughout history, this front window was changed from 2 windows to 1 window. But otherwise, there hasn't been a whole lot of changes that we could determine. Maybe a little bit in the back but we couldn't find the original plan, so we didn't know. In our research, it seems like Melton's last designs in town were around 1896. So even though the tax records say 1920, this is definitely a Victorian era home. And we want to keep all the great features that it has and accentuate them. It's really hard to see down the right side if you're looking at the house. How do I get back to those photos?
Want me to scroll for you, or you?
Oh, I think,
Okay.
I don't think I'll break it. Maybe. Yeah, so down this side, you can see that you have a very narrow point of view to see through to the back, and the addition will be back further than the gables and sort of the middle of the house, and then further back the kitchen, and we're adding to the kitchen in the back. So you may see a variably gangle, but you won't see a whole lot. For the floor plan to work, for the kitchen to get stairs in as well, and I know this is not part of your concern, but it's a lot more beneficial for us to go straight back horizontally on the east side. And if we do that, everything fits without moving into another part of the foundation, which gets a bit more complicated and more expensive. So we want to keep the roof line the same as it is in the back. So we'll copy that roof line. It's a 16 by 16 addition. We haven't talked to the homeowner about potentially using a different material on the lower level, but I'm sure we could have that conversation and figure something out if that's an important issue. Add anything? Cool. Thank you.
Was any of the other, just, it probably doesn't matter, but are those additions, are there any other additions that on the house?
On the house,
Hard to tell.
yeah, I think this little spot right here is an addition. And this was probably a sunroom or a porch.
Okay.
And now it's closed in. So that is it.
So just to clarify, you think that having that vertical trim before the addition is not going to be?
It's not a problem. I mean, no, it's not. I mean, it actually saves us money from having to go back, and blend and weave into the addition. But no, we usually get this sort of siding milled because we can't get that profile. But we use local lumber yards and it will match. We use wood and back prime everything so it's super durable and all that good stuff. Yeah.
And is there anything else that makes the addition discernible, or is that the only? Not that
Oh,
there needs
right.
to be, I'm just curious.
No, not that I can think of. One thing that Sean just reminded me of is that we have a setback encroachment. So we're coming within 4 feet of the lot line. This side is already encroaching.
Okay.
So we're just going to carry that straight back, but it won't surpass what y'all could allow based on your ability.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, Rob, because just as a reminder, there was an update to the discretionary decision portion of our video, right? That was section 711. I think, that gives the commission the ability, if there's a property located in a historic district, you guys can flex the the setback by, I think it's either 24 inches or 10% or something like that. It's, the document, I copied and pasted the section of the UDO out, and it's in the design standard folder, digital files if you want to read it. But they're basically, they're in line with that, with what the UDO allows, so that's included in the CA request.
We had a survey done and they marked that side because we wanted it to be really accurate. That. Great.
No further questions?
Okay. Thank you very much.
We discussed, yeah. Hey, commissioners, yeah, what do you guys think?
I think it's going to be unseen. And it follows the guidelines of that divider. Okay.
Really seems to echo in with the original house too.
It's hard to hear you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just, I'm sitting right here and I'm like, it sounds like a whisper. I'm not sure anybody else can hear you.
We'll have to restate.
The board that's going to divide the new addition from the original house is enough of a divider, and also will look good with the existing boards that the vertical boards on the corners and stuff. So I think that it follows the standards well enough, or well.
Yeah, I don't have that issue.
Okay, so far. All right, well, then at this point, I would like to open the floor up to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to comment?
I think it's a great idea.
I second that. All right, I'm going to close the floor for public comment, and commissioners, are we?
If we're ready for a motion, I would like to make a motion. Madam Chair, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, project description and photographs of subject property, 5 pages, Exhibit B, site plan, floor plan, elevation drawings and section drawings, 14 pages, Exhibit C, door schedule, Exhibit D, there was no Exhibit D, and Commissioner's actual inspection of the subject property by all members, accepting all. I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application is to construct a 2-story, 544 square foot addition on the rear elevation. All siding, eave, trim, and roofing materials will match existing. Foundation/basement level will be sided with smooth stucco, painted red color,
Just say
painted to match the color. Windows will be Marvin Ultimate 2/2 double hung wood. Doors will be Simpson Craftsman 2-light wood panel. All work will be in accordance with the attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. 2, that the standards for the additions found on pages 88 and 89 in the Montfort Historic District Design Review Standards adopted April 14, 2010 and amended December 9, 2019 in UDO section 711(7) (C) were used to evaluate this request. This application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. New addition is inset from the rear building, corners, and it's located inconspicuously on the rear elevation. Addition is compatible with existing building in height, massing, roof form, and pitch. Addition is limited in size and does not overpower the site or substantially alter the site's proportion of built area to green space. Windows and doors are similar to those in the original building in their proportions, spacing, and materials. Exterior siding and details are compatible with the existing building in material, texture, color, and character. Vertical trim and
Just say vertical trim.
vertical
AC.
trim makes the addition discernible from the historic structure. And G, existing windows that will be removed will be retained and preserved on site. 4, the action and improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montfort Historic District.
We have a second.
Second.
So we don't do roll call vote, just again.
Just say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried.
Based upon the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the follow, without conditions, and check in with Alex.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, motion carries. We will now move on to hearing for 141 Cumberland Avenue. And staff report.
Well, go back to where I want to go. Okay. So moving on, this application is for a proposed subdivision recombination on at 141 Cumberland Avenue. Here, let me go back. I'll show you the aerial first. This is a good test run of how to not set up your presentation next time. So this is just the GIS map to give you some context of where we're talking about. This came, a separate application for subdivision came before the commission that wasn't actually heard, but you all did see the plans for that. This is a totally separate new submittal for a subdivision recombination. So, the property highlighted in red is 141 Cumberland, and the property in blue is 74 Magnolia Avenue. And so the applicant is actually the owner of 74 Magnolia Avenue and is proposing to take a portion of the red lot and combine it with the blue lot. So we'll look at the plat. All right, I don't know why it's not giving me this normal back arrow. Okay, so basically, the big building that's kind of to the south in this on the plat is the multi-story historic apartment building that fronts on Cumberland Avenue. And as you can see, where there's the new line immediately to the north of it, that's the new property line. And so that portion will then be combined with the portion of the lot that fronts on 74 Magnolia Avenue. Does that make sense? I feel like it's kind of hard to understand, just me trying to drive you through the plat without being able to like use my little pointer. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it though. Can you? Okay. Okay. So this line that I'm moving along here, That's a new property line. So right now, this whole rectangular portion is part of this lot with the multifamily apartment building there. So there will be a new lot line here, and then that, all of that, what's labeled parcel A, will be added to this lot that fronts on Magnolia Avenue.
So that lot will be L-shaped
Correct.
and separate from the other rectangular.
Correct. Correct. So the one issue that's come up in past discussions around any proposed development here or subdivision is related to the wall that's noted on the site here. You can see that it's kind of towards the front of the lot, but when you're looking at it, it kind of, you may miss it if you're looking at it from Cumberland Avenue, but if you drive along the Short Magnolia, the alley behind, you can see where there's this big kind of rock, really cool looking rock wall that's almost like buttressed. It was actually an old foundation of a house that was there at some point in time. The house was gone before 1907, I think. The Sanborn map shows that foundation wall clearly marked on there as a foundation wall back then. So we know it's not a historic piece of infrastructure per se, as one would see like a rock wall along a street or, a front yard. So there's some question, I think, in people's minds about whether or not that wall should be retained and preserved. And keep in mind, we're just talking about the subdivision recombination today. We're not talking about any development, but one thing you all have to consider when you're looking at proposed subdivisions is, could development occur in a way that would be consistent with the historic development pattern, setbacks, et cetera. So for the last application, I did hear from some folks that had concerns about the wall. Like if we allow subdivision here, does that mean that the wall will get torn down? Well, that is not a question we can necessarily answer today, but it is something that I feel like you all should discuss in terms of whether or not you think that the subdivision makes sense. You could potentially develop on the back of the lot. It is flat back there, and you could maybe do a smaller structure as one would along an alley. I personally do not think that in my professional opinion, the wall is not necessarily a character defining feature of Montford. I guess it could have earned that over time, but it's not something that, again, it's not really like a piece of infrastructure like we would typically say to maintain and preserve. But I think that's open for interpretation. I did reach out to the state archaeology office, and they confirmed that this is not an archaeological site. And so they just, said it may be of historic importance regardless. So that's really up for you all to ultimately make that determination. I did send a note to the applicant this week to say, hey, the plat shows that the wall is to be removed. I just want to make clear that that's not part of what's if there's an approval today, that's not part of the approval. And he said that was just an error, that shouldn't be on the site plan. So if you all are okay with the subdivision, just know that will, that's actually just an error on the plan. And I think that's everything. I wanted to just kind of provide some context. This is just one of those weird kind of subdivision ones where I think, could development happen here and be consistent with the development pattern? Potentially. Like if you're looking at the southern end of that block, there's two houses there and they're pretty close together. So theoretically, you could put a house on the front of this lot, and it would. This box just kind of got a little bit of a mashup happening. The house to the north of where the wall is, that parcel has a pretty big house on it. So you kind of move from there to a blank space, and then to the apartment building, and then another little blank space, and then two houses, big houses that are pretty, close together. The lots are pretty narrow. So I don't think it's wholly outside of what could be approved, but I think it's just a discussion that you all need to have today. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Any questions for me?
So that house that was there where that foundation is, that was gone before those apartments were constructed.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, it probably was. If you look at the original plat, it probably was those two lots it looks like it's straddled probably the property line of the two original platted lots.
Is there an issue with that wall jumping over the property line?
I mean, only in that, like, if whoever owned parcel A, if they proposed to demolish it, they would have to ask for permission from
Is parcel A the apartment? Oh, parcel A is the L.
the new, yeah, the where it's being combined. They would either just be able to remove the portion on that, that part of the lot, or they could potentially ask the neighboring property owner if they were okay with the whole wall being removed. But that, I think, is the only issue I can think of. Oh, I added a
12 feet
picture.
tall, it's big.
It's 15 feet.
15?
Just past it. I don't know what is going on with this thing. That's a picture of it looking from the alley.
What is in the other side of this? Is it earth fill, or is it just kind of like the same with this, but without the buttressing, just like a flat wall?
It's pretty flat, and there's a big holly tree kind of right smack in the middle of it. It's kind of, I mean, I guess when they all I can think is that when they remediated this site or whatever, they just pulled it all out from that side of it, because everything else on that block is pretty flat. Like, there's not really very much change in topography. This is the only place where there's like this kind of weird bowl. It does slope a little bit down from the apartment side building a little bit, but it's not a ton. I mean,
Any other questions for Alex?
okay, thank you. Turn it over to you if you want me to help you navigate in here. I don't know why this thing's being kind of funky.
I'm gonna need this.
Okay.
So I wonder whether it needs to be set up. Cool. Yes, yeah, right. The old-fashioned way. Great, good afternoon. My name is Jackson Tierney. I'm co-applicant with my wife, J.C. Tierney, of 74 Magnolia Ave, and Robert Glasgow, owner of the Cumberland Apartment. The land under consideration for today was formerly referred to as Lot 2 on a subdivision application which was brought to this body in April. It was continued until a live meeting could be held. That subdivision application has since been withdrawn by the applicant, Mr. Glasgow. Today, you have before you a new subdivision application. It differs substantially from the prior one in that it only includes land north of the apartment building and is for recombination with our adjacent property at 74 Magnolia Ave, and therefore is not for a subdivided lot as before. On April 22nd of this year, following the continuance of the prior subdivision application, we executed a contract with Mr. Glasgow to purchase the subject land. This contract is part of the seller's IRS 1031 exchange and must be finalized next week to be effective. An HRC approval today will provide us just enough time to finalize the plat, file the deed, and set a closing date. We have lived at 74 Magnolia Ave for 7 years. We have long admired the open land next to ours, especially because our lot is small, mostly developed, and lacking any green space to speak of. Last year, we were able to purchase 3,600 square feet of land from the previous apartment owner, and through recombination, added it to our property. So I just wanted to put back up the survey and get everybody oriented again. focus. There it is. Better. So yeah, just to summarize, the yellow highlighted area, this was the original property line. And then last September, this 60 by 60 foot area was added as part of recombination. And it did not have to go through the commission at that time. It was just added. And so the piece that we're talking about is highlighted in pink. And again, as Alex had noted, there is a note on there, an unfortunate note that said this wall to be taken down. That is actually a note that survived from the survey that was submitted in April when this was being put forward as lot number 2 as part of a separate PIN. Throughout the pandemic, we have enjoyed the use of this additional outdoor space. And we've had a chance to further study and appreciate the beauty of the foundation wall and mature trees on the adjacent property. So as Alex had indicated, this is the wall. We've done a little bit of research on this. The 1913 Sanborn maps do not show this foundation, but the 1917 Sanborn does. So something happened in between that time. The other interesting thing to note is that where this foundation is located was never, to my research, identified as a separate lot. The John Perry's house, which is actually to the right of where this wall is right now, is 153 Cumberland. The only street house number on the historical directories for this entire time showed 135, where the Bed of Roses bed and breakfast is. So it appears that the Bed of Roses bed and breakfast had this entire piece of property as part of their lot until about 1928, when the apartment building was constructed. And it appears, without any evidence, that the 3 walls of this foundation were removed at the time the apartment building was constructed, although we don't have any specific evidence of that. And then a separate lot was created, separate from the 135 where the bed and breakfast is. And this is just a pretty picture of some Renegade photocell lights that we ran down and put out there to enjoy the wall a little bit more at night. Adjacent to the Cumberland Street line is this beautiful 35-foot magnolia tree, which was also a concern should development occur in terms of getting access to the site. And then also there are 2 hemlocks located on the property adjacent to the wall. According to the latest edition of the Montford Historic District Design Review Guidelines, the application before you today conforms with applicable requirements. Specifically, on page 41 of the guidelines, section 2, neighborhood settings, landscaping, and trees, we will, and I quote, retain and preserve mature historic trees and landscape features that contribute to the overall historic character of the Montford Historic District. Most notably, we see the rock wall, the magnolia tree, and the hemlock trees as the stars of the show worth preserving. The rock wall. We have already met with contractor Ron Dillingham, who has worked with his grandson to preserve walls throughout the Montford Historic District. After 100 years, the mortar has been reduced to dust and is in urgent need of repair. Urgent need of repair. We plan to engage the Dillingham Services as soon as possible after filing for a certificate of appropriateness. The magnolia tree, this 35-foot beauty, needs to be saved from any future development. To this end, we are working with our neighbors, Sean Perry and Chris Rhodes, to negotiate a second subdivision recombination of this land, which would nominally be from Cumberland Avenue to just short of the rock wall, short being just west of the rock wall. If we are able to come to terms, this new boundary will further protect and preserve this magnolia tree and the rock wall by being in a setback. The hemlock trees are one of our neighbors who lives at the Cumberland apartment, also works at the North Carolina Arboretum. She noticed one of the hemlock trees is showing signs of distress, so she has offered to get us in touch with an expert who can advise us on how to keep this threatened species alive. We welcome this collaborative and neighborly effort to preserve the character of the district. Lastly, in the weeks leading up to today's meeting, my wife and I printed 20 packets of information about this land and our vision for ownership. We knocked on doors in a radius much larger than the minimum HRC requirements for notification. Our goal was to ensure our neighbors were aware of what was going on and to make ourselves available for questions. We've heard only praise from our neighbors for this recombination. We believe the application before you conforms to all the UDO requirements for subdivision and the Montford Historic District Design Review Guidelines. And today we ask for your approval so we can close on the purchase contract next week to meet the IRS 1031 exchange timeline. Thank you very much.
Do any commissioners have questions? Very much. I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for the history. Oh,
Yeah. So I would now like to open up the floor for public comment. Please come on up. State your, you can come right up here and state your name and have you been sworn in?
I have not.
Okay, then we shall do that.
All right.
And anybody else who wants to speak who has not been sworn in can come forward. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness before the Historic Resource Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
This is actually for preliminary subdivision review, it's not for certificate.
Oh, you're right, for preliminary subdivision review.
I do.
Your answer remains the same then?
Yes, it does.
Excellent.
Thank you
And
all.
did you introduce yourself?
I did not.
Could you?
Yes. My name is John Ewing, and I live at 169 Cumberland Avenue, which is same side of Cumberland on the other side of Magnolia. So I'm sort of neighbors with Sean Perry. Anyway, I just wanted to express my support for this proposal. I walk and run up and down Cumberland all the time and go by this property and would love to see it preserved the way it is now with the magnolia tree on the wall. You can see a little bit of the wall from Cumberland. It's, not that high, but you do know it's there. So I just wanted to express my public support for this.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. David Stanley, 138 Cumberland. Right
Have you
across.
been sworn in?
I have. We live right across the street, and I'm one of the neighbors that Mr. Tierney talked to. We, the neighbors, I can't speak for them all, but I believe the sentiment is this is probably the ideal solution, the north side of this lot, of this subdivision. So we hope you give your approval.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hello.
Sean Perry, and I'm right next door to the lot, live next to Jackson and JC, and I too support the this subdivision. I feel that this wall is a very significant feature in Montford. I think that walls like this is what we're here to save. We have these debates all the time, what is important and what is not. I think this is a very important feature feature, which is why my wife and I are in discussions with them about buying the front yard portion of this, because that would essentially make it impossible to do anything further to deteriorate, remove this wall. You know, we got to think 100 years out, not just what's going to happen in 5 or 10 or 20 years. And I think this is a significant feature that needs to be saved. So because of that, I support it.
Sean, can I ask, have y'all considered a preservation easement for that wall?
I think that they have been in touch with the Preservation Society.
Okay.
Can I answer that question?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Sean. If there's anything else you wanted to add.
So we actually reached out to them pretty early on, but the requirements are pretty rigorous. It starts out with, maybe they'll take on the project, maybe they won't. And they just want us to find out if you're okay with giving a minimum of a $10,000 donation to the Preservation Society.
And they have, because they have, just like us, it's like the easement monitoring, so they have to, they have an inventory of properties that they basically review applications for, like the city does.
Right, it would be a baseline survey, you have to repair the wall, there'd be an annual inspection, you have to legally fix anything that they identify any year in perpetuity. So it's pretty rigorous, so we thought this was kind of the poor man's solution, but I think it's going to be probably more effective.
Any other public comments? I will close the floor for public comment and commissioners. Any thoughts? Discussion? And with the reminder that we're doing the subdivision of lots. That's really cool. And it all looks pretty straightforward.
I think it's great that the neighbors were able to work this out.
Yeah.
Slide into the finish line here. Maybe.
All right, are we ready for a motion then?
Madam Chair, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, proposed plat, Exhibit B, owner's consent form, Exhibit C, GIS map, Exhibit D, 1917 Sanborn Fire Insurance map, added by staff on July 12, 2020. Exhibit D, revised plat received July 12th. Exhibit E, photograph of the foundation wall taken by staff July 14th. That's field day. Exhibit F, the
Say additional photos taken by applicant.
additional photos presented by applicant of the wall, magnolia tree, and hemlocks. And the commission's actual inspection and review of the subject property by all members except. I move that the commission approve the preliminary subdivision approval request based on the following. One, the application is to remove 7,955 square foot area from the 141 Cumberland Avenue and combine it with 74 Magnolia area, resulting in a 2,795 square foot parcel, 20,795 square foot parcel, 141 Cumberland Avenue, and a 17,073 square foot lot, 74 Magnolia Avenue. Two, that the standards for subdivisions for subdivisions in historic districts found in the Unified Development Ordinance, Section 7-15-1I-11 in new construction, primary structures found on pages 92 through 93 in the Montfort Historic District Design Review Standards, adopted April 14, 2010, and amended December 9, 2019, were used to evaluate the request. This application does meet the standards for the following reasons. A subdivision of lots would allow for new development features at a minimum to be built in a manner that is congruous with the special character of the historic district as it relates to building setbacks. orientation and consistency with the historic development pattern. B, new lots with existing structures will retain their congruency with the special character of the historic district as it relates to building setbacks, orientation, and consistency with the historic development pattern. 4, that the action and improvements proposed in the application before us for preliminary subdivision approval are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Have a second. I'll second. So all those in favor?
Aye. Based upon the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a preliminary subdivision approval be issued without condition.
I'm wondering if for the condition, should we note that the stone wall is to be retained since it's different than what's in the plans?
You can't. Oh, just revise the plans to remove that,
Revise the plans.
because you're not making a decision about whether it should be
Exactly.
retained or not.
Right. I just want to reflect what is presented.
The condition would correct the notation on the plat that the wall is to be removed. The other conditions?
Do you have a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that motion carries. All right, that is the end of our new business, and I also wanted to just say thank you to everybody for being here in person again. This is kind of fun.
Very fun. Glad to see you. I have one other business item.
Well, we're not done, right?
Yeah, we're almost done.
Yeah.
This won't take very long. As Janice mentioned at our last meeting, there were updates to state statutes, and so as part of that, we just wanted to correct the conflict of interest part of the rules of procedure to align with the new chapter 160D. So Janice worked on that, so the red line version is in there. Other than that, it looks like a lot of stuff, but it's basically kind of a lot of really minor, substantive edits that we just cleaned it up. So I think Janice has a staff report though, so I should forget that we have a formal staff report for this since it's part of other business. So I will let you chime in, Janice, if you wanna get a staff report.
Good to see you all. I'm Janice Ashley, and the Legal Advisor for City. Aaron Haas, also in the chairman of our office, sits in with us for your table. He chaired the family and a couple of non-students on that. But 160D is, it's a very long staff report. Some of you have been on the commission have seen this before, and 160D is just a reorganization of the land use statutes for North Carolina, really just recombining things or reorganizing. There aren't too many brand new things but it's a big process for the planning department, which I also advise, to update our UDO to make sure that all these various provisions are reflected in our UDO. When it comes to historic preservation, this body heard some 160 changes back in October. Number one, if the 160 required that you no longer use the term guidelines when we're talking about standards for historic preservation. And that's just basically because you act quasi-judicially, and you don't want things to be too discretionary. And so this idea that a guideline is a little bit more squishy than a standard is why the statutes were changed to clarify that. So you'll hear, even as we read our approvals, you'll say the standards, or sometimes you say standards and guidelines, but basically focusing on that standard. Another change that we brought in October was that appeals of the decision, HRC decision, be taken directly up to Superior Court, whereas before they used to go to Board of Adjustment. which could be an awkward situation when you have one body of the city reviewing another quasi-judicial body's decision, and it just, it won't be much cleaner if we do have appeals. And I've been here 10 years. I don't think I've never seen an appeal of the historic.
I've had two since I've been here.
Really?
Yep, there were two times when the commission denied an application and the decision was appealed.
Okay.
You did not forget our 26 Cortland appeal, did you?
Oh, I did. Yeah.
You just blocked that out, right? For your mental health sake, block that one out.
It was hell, maybe that's why I forget. So, because nobody would overturn the decision of the body. And sometimes when we'll do trainings, you might hear from legal, I will give you some cases that are interesting to look at where there have been decisions that have gone up to the Court of Appeals. And that's when you really start to say, oh boy, what does it mean to be a quasi-judicial body and just acting? I mean, there's some cases that both from North Carolina that are just like, on the record, commissioners will say things like, well, I just don't like that because that's a little bit too high, or this is a little bit too low. And when I presented those cases to former commissions, they're just like, didn't anybody tell them that you can't do these things? So this body is really in good shape in terms of acting quasi-judicially. And I even noticed tonight as Gail read the intro, some of the new members might review this intro. But there's a lot in there that basically is explaining to the public what is quasi-judicial. And one of the things that I heard her state is for conflict of interest standard. 160D did not, this is one of the things we were updating. 160D didn't change what quasi-judicial conflict of interest standards are. They are always that you shall not have a fixed opinion into a meeting, open to whatever is presented before you. You are only to base your decision on what is presented before you. There's no ex parte communication, so if the neighbor comes up to a party, you just say, I am not able to talk about the certificate of appropriateness or something that will be coming before you. And then also it's always been that you cannot have a close familial business association with an applicant. You want to accuse yourself. If that's the case, let the rest of the commission know, and then we would vote to accuse you. And also no substantial financial interests, and so we'll have a text on the commission who need to accuse themselves because they have worked on a project or worked for a firm that's working on a project. So all we did in the rules was we used to just sort of state statute. And I don't feel that that's very helpful for boards and commissions to just say, oh yeah, it's under this statute because you're probably not going to go look it up. So now under H of your rules, you will see it written out and it references the 160D statute, but you'll see it written out. The rest of the staff report that I wrote talks about some other conflict of interest changes that happen for other kinds of boards, for example, planning and zoning. The conflict of interest standard wasn't broadened under 160D. Before, for planning and zoning decisions, that board just need to recuse themselves if there was a financial interest. This now is expanded so that they cannot vote if they have a close familial or business relationship, which you would think would always have been the standard, but it wasn't. So that's really the only area that's changed. And then we did some general cleanup. Alex, I don't know if you want to talk about, I know the one big thing was we had never, doing preliminary subdivision review, as we've done tonight, was newer. When did we?
I think 2018 or 2019 was when we changed that. So Janice updated the bylaws to reflect that that's now part of what you all review. And then everything else was kind of just general cleanup. We have one section that was related to a design review committee that we just eliminated because that would be just really unusual for the commission to form. We used to sometimes do that. Like if we had a really challenging design question that an applicant had, we would go out in the field and not just staff. We would invite commissioners to come and, help kind of advise in the field. That obviously is sort of a little bit of a gray area in terms of what is legally appropriate for the commission to do. And I think we would have had to go to the council, right? To actually add that into the development ordinance, because it was like something that was in your bylaws, but it wasn't also reflected in our ordinance. And so, but in my mind, I just assume that it's safer to not do that. Like, we can always call on past commission members that have served, or connect the applicant with an architect who we know is, or that's familiar with working with historic buildings.
It became difficult because then people on that committee were reviewing something before it was actually in the actual hearing, so then getting information, maybe basing their decisions on something. Yeah. So I think we started to go with former members who would give some expert advice.
Yeah, we just, I think, agreed a while back that we would just do that as an informal way to help. I mean, usually staff we can kind of work through it with an applicant. We haven't had any really challenging ones come up in recent times. So we eliminated that section from the bylaws. And I think that was the only other kind of primary thing that we changed. Otherwise, it was just like editing out typos and making sure all the capitalization, everything was correct throughout the document. I'm sure there's some chair missed somewhere that I tried to change them from chairman to chair, to just chair, gender neutral. So anyways, other than the conflict of interest and eliminating that section, it was really just clean up. So, and for whatever reason, we were having some trouble before the meeting getting the files that your commissioner packet to show up in the commission volunteer Google Drive. So it might look different, but I know that the red line version that I basically made a copy of your document, Janice, and put it in their folder, but it said that they needed requests or they needed access, and I sent you a note right before the meeting was about to start, but it's okay. If you see that in your email, it's commission volunteer, it's who's asking for permission, and that's just this group that we were asking that. So do you all want me to read through any of this since you can't see it on your screens, or what's best? I might be able
So
to.
you never got to read them?
Well, it's been in their packet since I shared the packet with you guys a couple
So they could
weeks
read the
ago.
packet, but not.
It's the same, it's the packet, but it's just for whatever reason, on this commission volunteer, it's saying they need access because I don't own the file, you do. So whenever I shared with them, it was like, you know how Google gets, it's so complicated. Because I don't own it, I can't, just because I.
comes off. Yes, you're not getting it.
I don't think you have to read the whole.
Okay,
And it sounds like you gave a pretty solid summary.
yeah, the three, actually I left one out, the three things that Janice pointed out, the subdivision review, the addition of that information, the elimination of the design subcommittee section that we can't do, and then the update to the conflict of interest section, so.
And we do have the staff report with that
Right.
summarized.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that if everyone else is.
Yeah, I think our general questions, because there are a lot of newer members and now quasi judicial, at some point, hopefully we'll get back to training. Maybe that's of interest. And we do, the School of Government does an excellent quasi judicial training that most planning and zoning, Board of Adjustment, and HRC commissioners go to. Gail, have you gone to it?
I did. It was good.
To do that. Yeah, we have a great book. I don't give extra copies, but it's a quasi judicial book that you can borrow. We can have extra copies to give you if you're interested. But you can check it out.
Yeah,
It's the HRC library.
if they pop up with a training anytime, obviously I will share that with you. I think we had like 7 commissioners attend the last one, so that was great. And then, yeah, we'll definitely try to plan a retreat for some time. Hopefully, I'm hoping before the end of the year to get a retreat on the books with y'all, because we have so many new people, and I think it would just be good, since we haven't all been in the same room in so long, just to, meet each other and spend some time and just, usually what we do is we do a training for part of the day with legal staff, and maybe another session on design guidelines or whatever we think is going to be most useful. And then we'll do something fun for the second half. Like I think we've done the Hood Huggers tour before, which was really awesome. And so I'll hopefully, by the way, this is Avery too. He is a new planning technician in our department, and Avery is going to be supporting some of our work, thankfully. So now that he's on board, once we get him kind of up to speed, I should be able to kind of try to plan some other stuff. And on that note, I do want to, I made a note on my agenda, but I don't think it showed up on yours, but I did want to clarify that after the last meeting, Janice let me know that the information that was shared with me about forming these informal working groups was maybe not completely accurate. And so we'll just walk that one back and say we actually need to have a formalized subcommittee, and I'll try to regroup with the people who were serving on it before the pandemic, and then see who might want to join. But we try to keep that to 5 members so that we don't end up with the issue of quorum kind of on the regular with that group. So I'll keep you all posted on that.
So I just want to make one comment, since we started reading, Emily, and I guess tonight with me, these kind of basic guidelines as we go into the meeting. That's been really helpful. I agree. It's just a good reminder of why we're here and what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that, I think it was Ryan who initiated
It was
that.
Ryan.
After we took the quasi-judicial hearing.
And after that,
Had it all written out.
And after there was one meeting that was very anyway, right after that, it seemed like these came out,
Yeah, he totally took that upon himself to do, so we appreciate that, and I think it does help kind of keep everybody.
And then if it ever got really wild again, it'd be easy enough to kind of pull them and say, as a reminder, this is why we're here.
Right. So, and we have had plenty of hearings where there's been kind of a lot of repetitive information sharing, so I think that's, helpful to remind. I think it's just a note for the chair that's in there that we don't actually read a lot, but the chair can kind of head off any unduly repetitious testimony.
I skipped it. I
Well,
was
I
supposed to read it, but
I
it's
don't think that's something that
I
the
can read
chair
it now.
typically reads out loud, but.
I was glad, because I wasn't sure for a second. Note for hearings with numerous participants, the commission is not required to listen to evidence that is unduly repetitious or information that's irrelevant or immaterial.
Right, and I'm pretty sure I remember which project that was for, and that project is going to come back alive soon, just as a fair warning to all of you. For those of you who weren't here, I'll just keep you in suspense. It was just a very controversial project.
And it's coming back.
Yes. I don't know when yet, but possibly September.
Yeah, because those notes, you didn't have to read them all, but so part of it is telling the commission this is your conflict of interest standard, what you're looking at. But the more important part of that is telling the audience, one, you're supposed to have standing. You're not supposed to be from across town. We don't get into standing a lot, but that's why we say, where are you, where do you live?
Right.
And what's your relation to this project? Because you can't, really, we're only supposed to be hearing from somebody that's an interested party. And then people get confused with just things like zoning meetings, which are called legislative, where you can just say, I don't like this, or I just don't think, and it makes them say, this is not my opinion, this is because this guideline, I think it conflicts with this guideline or that guideline. So hopefully, if they're listening, it might start to sink in for the people that are coming. This is not just say whatever you want, this is quasi-judicial. We're acting as a court, we're giving testimony and do call testimony. Yeah, I think that's really.
With nexus. I mean, folks have to have nexus to the project.
And so we need a motion, right, for adopt the updated.
Yes, because
bylaws.
the rules of procedure say that these can be amended with the majority vote. That's the last.
So, can I make a motion to adopt the amended HRC rules of procedure?
Seconded, Hornaday?
And all those in favor? So we're good now?
You're good. It's actually 75% of the business.
Quasi.
And this part, when we're doing this other information, we're not in quasi. But when we out of the quasi, when we come out of the hearings and we say other business, outside the business.
Other business.
It should be clear to anybody that this is more general.
Right.
We lost our last remaining member as he got bored. Or not member, but attendee. So that was all I had for other business, but obviously if you all have.
I have an HRCE question. I think last month, there was a building, say the apartment, that was a non-contributing structure. But it was built in when they made decided it was a non-contributing structure, it was 1970 or 1980. So now that's 40 years later. And is there a relook at things that were called, whether that's in Albemarle or Montfort or Kenilworth, non-contributing?
Extend the period of significance, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah, so basically we would have to do like resurvey.
resurvey.
Yeah, but we would just have to hire a consultant to update the National Register nomination essentially.
Is that something the commission helps the city county do, or is that something Alex does?
No, that's not something that I would do. It would be something we would hire a consultant
Yeah.
to do. And I can tell you that probably that's not gonna happen anytime in the near future because we've got so much other, like we're doing starting our Burton Street survey, and then beyond that, we'll continue to try to do survey work around BIPOC communities
Right.
that haven't had survey work done yet. So eventually, hopefully we'll get to that.
But when they come and they say, well, this is non-contributing, it was built in 1952.
Well, I think, but we still have standards for those buildings, so I think, and I think they're pretty strong. Yeah.
Because they say it's not contributing, but you kind of have to still follow, more or less.
Yeah, and I think it's really just not the intent of those design standards is to make sure that that building is retaining its own character too, just like the rest of the design standards are. So I think, like to Gail's point, it's not really that different, even though it sets them apart. I think you have more leeway to make changes on those buildings, whereas you may not, for buildings that are contributing. But I do still think that the standards are strong enough for now. But we can, that's definitely something we've talked about over, my years here. It's like, gosh, we have a lot of districts that need updating. There was a flurry of nominations that happened back in the early part of when the Historic Preservation Act was enacted, so 70s, 80s. And then obviously momentum around that kind of just, we ended up with 14 historic districts, National Register historic districts. So that's, pretty good number for a city this size. And then obviously, yeah, it just kind of like the momentum, I think, shifted into probably other stuff, feeling like we documented kind of the main part of the history. And I think that we're just now coming, and you all can certainly chime in here, that I think is in the field of historic preservation, people are just coming to kind of want to kind of loop in the mid-century and things that were built after, 1930. Yeah. So that's something that definitely, I think probably a lot of communities are like us in that they have not really made a whole lot of progress in those areas. So, it's definitely on my radar for sure. Because I do feel like Kenilworth is actually not even listed in the National Register, which is amazing, but there's a lot of really great mid-century architecture in that neighborhood.
I feel like Chippo's had some kind of presentations on mid-century or something. But maybe we can keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I feel like they have too in the last couple of years. Maybe there was a virtual plan.
Maybe actually it was ACHP.
But I'll, maybe so, if you see anything pop up, feel free to pass it along and I can send it out to the group. But yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I do think, at least for now, our standards in Montford and the other historic districts do kind of lend themselves, although we'll say for Biltmore Village, and Biltmore Village is kind of its own weird little anomaly. Like everything is very Biltmore Village-y in Biltmore Village. So people, and the annoying thing about it is that people, when we talk about like potential historic districts in other places, they assume we want it to look like Biltmore Village, which is pretty frustrating. But there was one non-contributing building in that district. I don't know if any of you remember this, but where the Starbucks is on Hendersonville Road, or I guess that's Dowell? Right next to where the entrance to Biltmore Estate is. That there used to be a little building there that was like 1960s, like little, looked kind of like one of those little bunker buildings, like where it was stone and then had like the little like ribbon transom windows, like a big wooden kind of just basically looked like a little block, a little fortress. And it was kind of cute. It was like a dentist office, you know, an office building that you would think of that era, and it was demolished to make way. But in that case, we did not oppose the demolition because it was completely out of character with Biltmore Village. Whereas, like Montford, for example, has some, you know, not contributing structures that are mixed in where there's kind of make more of a case for like including like the ranch style houses and those sorts of things and expanding the period of significance. So that was my really long rambling answer.
That was a great answer.
That was good. Right, because it's temporal boundaries, but also physical boundaries. It's complicated.
Right, right, for sure.
Are we done? Anything else? Anybody else bring up or questions or?
It's good to see every person.
I know, it's nice to see those of you that I've never seen in person. Nice to see your faces and all to see that folks see you again. It's been a long journey.
When was the last meeting? Was it February 2020, March 2020?
Yes. No, it's February.
Yeah, because March 13th things kind of shut.
Yeah, and we started with virtual meetings last July, so it's been a whole year. Kind of crazy that it worked out that way. I didn't think we would be to in-person meetings this soon, to be honest. I thought we were looking at probably fall, but it is nice. So,
And just to confirm, we as commissioners are only in person if this all gets up.
right, this will just be like, you can just watch it. You won't
We
be able to
can't be a floating
participate.
head.
Okay. No, and so I won't be sending you all the Google Meet invite anymore, unless you just want me to. I just didn't want to do that because I didn't want it to be confusing. Then if I sent that to you, and you're like, wait, I can join the Google Meet? Because there's no way to eliminate the little button that says join with Google Meet. So I didn't want you guys to be like, wait, what are we doing? So I probably won't send you the Google invite if that's okay with everyone, and just note on your calendar that the second Wednesday of every month, you're stuck with me here in City Hall, unless you're on vacation or you're doing something fun. And then,
There is a discussion for other boards where they want to continue to have remote participation by the audience. It works for, it could work for council, council's not doing it right now, but they have only staff to run these things. It took a lot of staff time to, because I don't know anything technologically, but it took a lot to get these virtual together. But that is not going, I doubt that will ever happen for quasi-judicial, because as you saw that one, the one that we had, the subdivision one that the man mentioned, people could just write in and say, we object to the virtual format, and so they were able to pull it. So when it's quasi-judicial, you always want somebody there in person.
yeah, and we're not allowed to meet virtually, right? Unless there's a state of emergency.
Right, unless there's a state of emergency, exactly.
So do we need to like a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Make a motion to adjourn the July meeting.
A second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hooray, thanks, everyone.